about the IDG. We were created in 1998. We're from Hawaii. We're primarily Native Hawaiians. And we have been involved as geothermal developers with Native peoples since that time. We have a couple of projects under our belt, and we have now come home. We're consultants as well as owners of geothermal development in Aotearoa, New Zealand. There's a video coming up and you'll see some of the Maori kupuna who are our partners and clients. But we work in New Zealand to develop geothermal energy with Native peoples in ways that are respective of their human rights and supportive of their right to develop their community, including to have a benefit for economic development. This is the last bore that we put in. It went in last year. As you can see, we have no toxic discharge, air, or on the land. This bore was placed in the middle of the lambing fields of our clients at Tahike. So every year, when it is time for the lambs to be born, they are brought to our plant. We haven't lost a single lamb. We do have a problem with stray dogs, but not with toxicity.
One of the big things for Maori is for Maori to be able to work with Maori.
It's empowered us in a way that gives our people opportunities that may not have been realised otherwise.
What geothermal has brought to them is a new venture altogether. Something that we never dreamt of, that the geothermal could be harnessed. It was always talked about, but I can say wholeheartedly, today the beneficiary stands on their feet.
IDG, thank you very much for the assistance that we are receiving from you on this project.
This next slide is a slide of who some of our team members are, and we've disclosed this publicly as well as to those who are currently putting out the RFP. The last statement that was made public by HECO was that they anticipate the RFP will be posted within the next 2 to 4 weeks. So we're all anticipating that that will come out. Dr. Zaruk is now a resident of New Zealand and a citizen. He fled the regime of Mr. Saddam Hussein. He is considered to be the foremost geothermal expert in the world and is a person who has written their textbook. Working with us on the science side is SKM, Sinclair Knight, and GNS. These are two of the best in the world. Their science is what is provided to the larger geothermal producers, Chevron and others. We skip the temptation of making a commitment to technology. You do not want to do that, because when you make a commitment to technology, you're favoring a process before you know what the resource is. In today's informed way of developing geothermal, you work with the earth, and the earth will tell you what her power is, and then you match that to technology. When you don't do that and you bring in cheap old technology, it winds up exploding in your face and threatening your community. You do not do that. People keep calling me saying, why don't you disclose the technology? The answer is, it is the earth that chooses the technology, and it is the science partner that makes sure that you get the right answer. Eastland Group is also a partner of ours in Aotearoa. Their background is transmission. And recently, because of change in law the last 10 years, they have been allowed now to come into production. We are happy that there are our transmission partners, because in Hawaii, we continue to labor under a monopoly for transmission that is exclusively under the control of HECO with old technology, transmission that has not been updated. So we have some of our members of our team online. Just to get clear where geothermal development came from, it was an idea that moved with the independent Hawaiian kingdom, and King Kalakaua, who himself was an inventor, he had gone up for the World Fair to meet with Tom Edison. Edison at the time was bringing online the first electricity grid in the United States in New York. Kalakaua went because he had studied Edison and he knew that there was a telegraph, and he wanted Edison to help him create electricity on the Big Island and through the telegraph wire send it to the palace. Edison told him it would come, but likely not in their lifetime. 4 years later, on his birthday, Kalakaua threw the switch at the palace, and we had electricity there. When geothermal came to Hawaii 25 years ago, we had nothing but problems, and we all had to oppose it. We didn't have any other choice. A big plan was put together. It was not transparent. There was no protection for culture. Our own Big Island Councilwoman, Auntie Emily, was arrested for picking flowers to make a lane for the environmental issues were significant. Not only was there toxic venting, there were explosions. We had to have 2 civil defense evacuations at a cost of over $1 million each to the county. A child died when the mother could not be removed in time. There was no local benefit. There was no benefit for Native people. There was no benefit for ratepayers. There was no vision for Hawaii. We did what was appropriate. We shut it down. For those who are thinking, what is the appropriate approach to that kind of problem today? The answer is that nothing has changed. Filthy, cheap technology comes in with a lot of problems. Taking big money out of the community, returning nothing, the appropriate response is that you shut them down. Just to be clear. What did we learn from the past? We had a significant win all the way to the Supreme Court. Hawaiian cultural rights were not only affirmed, but the Supreme Court expanded them. Today, because of that case, hundreds of hula dancers come to the Big Island for the monarch. They go to gather, even though they are not residents, and when they are done, they return what they have taken with prayer. We won that case. It's time to take those restrictions and those requirements for our people's rights and put it into a development model and insist that it is implemented. We know today that when you develop the subsurface, you need to have a program to protect the surface area. If not, you wind up having invasive species come into the forest and many other problems. This is why, under our model, we look not only at how we're developing the subsurface, but what is occurring with these species at the surface level. Following the win at the Supreme Court, we went into the state. We amended Chapter 343, which now requires that cultural impacts be addressed. Prior to this time, when the state looked at the EIS, they only looked at biological impact, things like insects or endemic species of plant or habitat. But today, they are required to look at cultural impact. Hawaiians achieved that. Today, we know that the processes must require community involvement, education, and transparency, and that's what we're doing. That's why we went to the state to get policy changes. We've had many community workshops here. We just presented to the 60 United Church of Christ ministers from the Big Island. They invited us to go to Kuaiha'o, and we're also now doing workshops even with the schools. So our native to native model was specifically adapted to address concerns in Hawaii, and I should say also in the Pacific, because there are many significant cases that Maoris, Australian natives, and others have won. And these we have taken and put into our model. Our model is based on the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. And what we did was we extrapolated out of those human rights standards that should be applied in the Pacific region where this model is being used. And we also then took the juridical precedents and the statutory precedents protecting Native peoples from throughout the Pacific. And we took those things and put them into development criteria in our model. Development can only proceed when human rights are respected. When they're violated, you wind up going to court. And here we had 6-7 years contested case appealed all the way to the Supreme Court. We cannot delay renewable energy with useless litigation. Address human rights and protect them going in so that we can proceed with our agenda to achieve renewable and clean energy self-sufficiency and independence from fossil fuel addiction. If you look at our model, we include everyone. We identify every stakeholder in the state government, the county, and also the local community, including the Native Hawaiian community. we look at the host community, we define it as being the local communities such as Puna, but also the entire island, because the entire island is impacted when renewable energy is developed. And also we must include everyone, because in the state of Hawaii, geothermal energy is a mineral, it is an asset of the public trust. And so the beneficiaries are the public and the native, and trust law in our state, as defined by the Supreme Court, requires that the beneficiaries receive a direct benefit whenever public resources are developed. That has been ignored and continues to be ignored to this very day. When you look at our list of stakeholders, take it and compare it with the Hawaii Clean Energy Initiative list of stakeholders. There's only 5 that they work with. The counties were excluded. All labor is excluded. All beneficiaries are excluded. Look at the state Hawaii Clean Energy Initiative. They only work with the Helco Group. They only work with the Federal Department of Defense. They work with the tourism industry and the Waikiki Tourism Board, but they don't work with a single county. That's why there is no policy framework that is inclusive of the county, and I'm hoping that you can address that and change that, because you're the only ones that have that power. Last summer, we went to the state legislature. We took this model and we showed them why Hawaii was suffering from an economic depression. The export, it used to be $5 billion per year, but just last month they changed it. We're now exporting $7 billion per year for fossil fuel, and that is having a direct impact on our economy. We told the legislature it's time to change policies for energy development and to upgrade them, to demand that there is an open and transparent development process and early in the game so that we can assess all impacts, to insist that there is criteria that is not going to have a negative impact on culture or environment, and also to guarantee that there are going to be tangible opportunities for community benefit and for small business development. These were all promises that were made 25 years ago when geothermal came here. But you don't see a single small business in Puna. You don't see a single hothouse, because their contractual agreements made sure that nothing was put in writing for the community, and that's why it has never become a reality. The developments that we endorse and that we pursue have to meet criteria in these 4 areas. They're culturally appropriate by our standard, and if they are not, we do not engage in them and we do not support them. They have to be environmentally sustainable. That means more than just clean technology, but it means development in a way that makes sense for the community and for the resource owner. Social responsibility means not only that you address the environmental issues, but that you look at the impact on the community and on the economy when you move mega development that is going to bring hundreds of millions of dollars to the pocket of a few while causing significant problems to the ratepayers who are being told they have to pick up the cost. And finally, what is economically sensible? And it's not economically sensible for the globalized arena, for foreign companies, for the U.S. Department of Defense, but economically sensible for Puna, for Hamakua, for the county of Hawaii. How do we look at energy development, and how does it interface with our general plan and with your plan that you've laid out for economic development here on the island? So we look at the small before we look at the globalized. Culturally appropriate means that Native people are involved in the development in a significant way. It means that all cultural protections guaranteed by our juridical process are implemented, not just the Pele Defense case, but the burial law, the historic preservation laws, the laws for environmental impact statement. These things have to be included. It means that when you move forward, your written agreement, your PDA, puts first the protection of cultural resources. Under our model, we protect all cultural resources, not just like what happened when Ormat brought their technology here 25 years ago, if it was a tangible cultural resource, they were willing to discuss it. But if it was intangible, they didn't even consider it. Tangible is what you can touch. So if it's archaeological, your developer is usually willing to admit it's there because they can't ignore it. It's there and you can see it. But what about the oral histories of our peoples? What about the beautiful places and the hulas that go with them? What about the names? All of these things are cultural and they seem to get left by the wayside. We don't do that. Before the project footprint is laid down, we retain native peoples so that they can identify the trails, the endemic species for medicine, the burial areas, and all the sacred sites. And this information is not made public, is not, because indigenous peoples have a right to protect their burial areas and not to have them put in tourism books so that pot hunters can go and dig up artifacts and sell them. And that is what has happened here. So we will share these with state historic preservation, county and others. You have your historic preservation folks. We're willing to work with them, but we're not willing to make our sacred places known for pot hunters. That's inappropriate and a violation of our human rights. When we look at environmental sustainability, it is a commitment to clean technology and to an appropriate process for development. But it begins by recognizing that we're part of the problem ourselves. We are contributing here on the Big Island to a carbon footprint for our state. We are terribly dependent on fossil fuel. Right now, we see the outcome of this. You can fish anywhere around the Big Island, but with safety, you can only eat fish from Hilo about 1/4 of the way down Lapahoehoe. Everywhere else on the island, you run the risk of ciguatera. Ciguatera comes primarily from oil and gas leaking into our waters. We know that oil and gas prices are going to go up. We're the most energy insecure state in the Union. And because energy is only one side of the coin and the other side is food security, we are also the most food insecure state in the nation. No one will tell us that. Everyone will say we're fossil fuel insecure. We're the most insecure in the nation. But they won't say that as a result of that, we are also the most food insecure. We need to address that. Our approach looks at the appropriate way to develop energy for islands. When you look at the state plan, which is going with ECO, is a plan for developing energy for continents. When you're on a continent, you have contiguous land masses, so you can merge your services through a grid because the grid and the poles and lines are on land. When you take that model and impose it on islands, the only result is to try to string the islands together with billion-dollar cables. If we ask the question, what would it take for Lanai to be 100% energy self-sufficient, one windmill is all Lanai needs. One windmill is all Molokai needs. We're ready to ask the question, how much firm power do we need for the Big Island to be energy self-sufficient, rather than resurrecting the old plan for 1,000 megawatt development to cable to Oahu? Inappropriate policy for this county. We have to look after the needs of this county and our energy self-sufficiency. Been working a lot with Don Thomas. He's helped us create this. We did this to help the state legislature, and we should all be thankful that Denny Kaufman was there, because earlier this past session, it was Denny that moved legislation to ensure that whenever geothermal drilling occurs, we do not negatively impact the aquifer. Do you know that the Department of Health in this state didn't know what the standard was to protect the aquifer? We went to Mr. Gary Hoosier. He didn't know either at the OEQC. Good thing we had Andrea Gill, who worked with Denny to come up with the standard, gave it to us. We sent it out globally to affirm it. because we will pay to ensure that any development standard used is going to protect our aquifer. These are our waters. This is our home. We're going to be sure that it's protected. And that's why I'm saying we really should be thankful that Benny was there to help us, and that we have people like Don Thomas. Here's a shot of a very simplified geothermal power plant. Go back to that. Or was that the wrong shot? Okay, it will come up. Here. We don't believe in, we don't use, and we don't recommend binary technology, which ORMAT uses. They're a leader in the world because they came up with binary technology in the 1960s. Well, that was 50 years ago. We don't do that anymore. We use flash and double flash technology. I was very happy to hear the presentation this morning. They're using a hybrid of a binary technology. Only two in the world. You know why? Because only they have the old binary technology. They're trying to upgrade it by turning it into a hybrid. If that was leading technology in the world today, you would see it in the world, but there aren't. There's only two, and both of them are ORMAT because they're trying to upgrade their technology. There's 100 technologies in the world. You match them to the earth. So you make sure you have the best service to the community and the safest service. We don't go with the old technology anymore. Reinjection was built into these models. It wasn't built into ORMAT. They came here with spewing toxicity and were forced by community objection to go in to reinjection. What are we talking about when we talk about community benefits for small business development? Well, when you look at the trust requirement that is upon the county and the state, it means that every opportunity to bring the benefit to the owner, the beneficiaries, the public, and the native must be pursued. When you look at what mega geothermal development has got out of us to this point, it came here 25 years ago. Started with 25 megawatts, it's up to 38. We estimate probably maybe 250 to 300 million in profit has rolled out to private sector. Money comes in big time. The opportunity to do business in our state comes in, and energy comes in. Where was the money that went to the community? And I'm not talking about royalties. We pay royalties, everyone is required to. That's a cost of doing business. Royalties, a cost of doing business. The county got royalties, you used it for the people. I'm not talking about that. We're paying royalties because you have to do that. I'm talking about additional benefit to the community that holds it. In every community we go into, we get some attorneys, we create a community trust. For 50 megawatts, we give the community $1.25 million a year. That comes to 2% of gross. Developers make money. Why not share with the community? The community is hosting it. The entire community. What about putting food on the shelf at the food bank? What about helping out the nonprofits? What about supporting our athletic programs for youth? What about these things? 1.25 million a year, 2% in gross. It goes to the community, and for goodness sakes, let's let the community put together a board and handle the distribution of these funds. It's their community. We require that the PURPA guidelines of federal law be applied. In this state, PURPA does not apply because in 2008, the state signed an agreement with HECO saying that our ratepayers would never be allowed to have the protection of the federal PURPA law. We put it into our contracts, fair and reasonable cost to the ratepayers, they own it. We insist that there's job training and on-site employment activities. If you don't have job training, you don't give the jobs to the local people. So every single renewable energy project that comes in, you need to have a job training program. We require scholarships and educational opportunities. In Aotearoa, we give $20,000 a year. We have another plan. In Aotearoa, our partners said, well, sure, we'll give them jobs. They agreed to that. Then they said, how many Maori geothermal engineers do you have? We said none yet, but we'll graduate our first class in 5 years, and now we're graduating our first class in 3 years because the project is sending Maori. Forget that. The fact that you have a lease for a geothermal plant for 40 or 50 years doesn't mean you wait that long to get the jobs. You put the job training on day one, and you have the jobs in the plant within 5 to 6 years. The way we do this is with public-private partnerships. Now, under our model with Native peoples, when the lease term is over, we turn over the plant to the Maori Trust. It is their resource and it is their land. Here in Hawaii, we went to the state. We told the state at the close of our project, we will transfer the entire plant to the state. We went to see OHA because I'm hoping that our OHA trustee will work with our state DLNR, and then we will put Hawaiians into the business of owning energy so that they can protect their own energy security in the coming years. Thanks much. This segment is something you all should be well aware of because these were all the promises made 25 years ago that never occurred, but they occurred in our projects because we put it in writing. We need to support food security, agriculture, and the things that farmers need to stay in business. Energy, steam, fuel, fertilizer. These are the things that we need to keep our ag industry strong. And we do this not only for our county, but for the whole state, because you know, the Big Island is the food basket for all of our state. Oahu has a population, but they cannot feed themselves. It is the Big Island that is the food basket. For our 50 megawatt projects, we looked at how we could support agriculture. If we use cascading, that is, take the steam that comes out, use the hottest steam for the first need, timber drying. We have a timber industry on our island. It is one that is growing. Use that steam. Then when it's done, use that steam again to dry food. When that's done, use that steam again so that you can have a hothouse. This is called cascading. It fits in beautifully with the ag plan that we have here for the county and with the state ag proposal for our county. You know, all of this, if you take a look at Dr. Mary Finley and Andrea Gill, they'll give you all the studies that were done here on the county 25 years ago. All of this is already in writing. But of course, it never became a reality because the partners that put up the PBG plant reneged on their promise to provide this. They didn't provide any land. They didn't provide any energy. So there never was any secondary small business for food security for our island. This is the last use of steam. And it's interesting, if you look at Richard Haas' workup, you can see, I mean, he's just doing tomatoes. He's over $1 million a year. When you use geothermal, you don't necessarily have to have soil for agriculture. Hothouse agriculture and aquaponics produces food without soil. So you could use all areas, even rocky areas in Puna and in Hamakua. These areas could then become productive. Here's a favorite slide we just put in to support hydrogen. When you look at our county needs, it's about 200 megawatts. But county council, remember, that isn't the full need because we're currently using fossil fuels to put in our cars. The county is picking up a big bill for emergency vehicles. We're all paying fossil fuel for that. Now we have to address that problem by getting rid of our reliance on fossil fuels for fuel for our automobiles and vehicles. This is why hydrogen makes a lot of sense. We already have a hydrogen highway in the US, and I was glad to see that federal research funds approved now in Hawaii on our island, and hydrogen is now being, we're developing prototype model. It's not really me, others are involved in it, including Guy Toyama them, but the National Park Service is already moving ahead here to buy hydrogen cars, and they're going to be participating with it as well. Peter Carlisle, I had a talk with him recently over on Oahu, and they're also looking to purchase hydrogen cars, which I think is good. What's our current environment? Well, there's bad news and there's good news. The bad news is that we have the worst problem in the nation. We're the most oil dependent, we're the most energy insecure. We're relying on imported fossil fuel 90%. Pretty bad for us. This next figure is incorrect. I just learned last week that the DBED has now put on their website that we're exporting not 5 billion but 7 billion, and this is only for oil. If you look at the import costs for food, I think it's about 4 billion now, and that is directly related. So as fuel goes up, you see the cost of food going up as well. Our ratepayers are paying the highest electricity rates in the United States of America. And I want to correct one misinformation. When this PVG first started out, there was avoided cost contracting, and it was tied to the price of oil. We have another 15 years to go on that contract tied to the price of oil for 25 megawatts. When this matter was raised in the legislature in 2011, Senator Solomon hit the roof and wanted to know why we didn't have the protection of the PURPA law. She came to the agreement with Senator Don Dela Cruz that we were being victimized on this island by a price fixing scheme. And they wrote a letter requesting that the AG investigate it. Well, the AG came back saying that we have a state-supported monopoly, HECO and PVG. Our senators are now moving, and they decided they were going to lower the price, and I agreed with them. Had some meetings with HELCO, Robbie Scott Seal, and told them, hey, you folks aren't charging avoided cost on the first 25. Bring the price down. 20% of our electricity on this island is coming from geothermal that belongs to the public and the native. It's a public resource. They're billing us for oil we are not consuming. The cost of production for geothermal, they paid off the $200 million plant in the first 8 years. So the last 10 years, because they've been operating for 18 years, last 8 years, 10 years, it's been pretty much clean. Current cost, according to Senator Solomon, is 8 cents a kilowatt hour. Well, following our negotiations with HECO in 2011, HECO came back to the table and said, we agree. We agree that the avoided cost contract for the first 25 megawatts is extremely high. We agree that there is a burden on the ratepayers of the Big Island, and we agree to renegotiate that 25 megawatt down. They agreed to do it. Ormat refused. Ormat refused, and that is why we are paying 44 cents, and that is why it will continue to go up. You can be big when it comes to 8 megawatts. We'll give you a fair price. When you won't talk about the underlying 25 megawatts, we want the price down. Bring the price down to the cost, because our people own it, and so is the public. We are not accepting the Ormat excuse that they're for profit. So is HECO. They've agreed to bring the price down, so are we. We're not going to put up with this, and we're not going to tolerate it. It's not a question of competition at all. It's a question of gouging the ratepayer. The good news is that we have an energy bounty that puts us in the top 1% of the world. Hawaii. Hawaii has more than sufficient energy resources, and our island should be leading the world in that by demonstrating our prototype models, not only for business development, but for technology and everything else. The other good news is that the vast majority of renewable and sustainable energy resources belong to the state. Geothermal, which is a mineral. Ocean thermal, OTEC, belongs to the state. It's within 3 miles. tidal, wave, surge energy, these are all public trust resources. Instead, we have a history of supporting monopolies developing on private property. Why not develop our own publicly owned resources and bring the revenues into the public coffers? Right now, we need to look at our energy issues and our policies. Our state doesn't have an inventory of energy resources, but thanks to Senator Solomon's bill, the inventory of the public trust, we can now begin to address this. Our state doesn't have capital to invest or develop. It doesn't have expertise because these many years we've been the victim of transmission and production monopolies. We need to get in the game, work with private sector, and develop tech relationships with others in the U.S. and also in the international arena. This is the way that we can bring our county and state into the picture. These are the questions, the tough questions that come back to our county. Hawaii County was excluded from the Hawaii Clean Energy Initiative. If you look at the state plan for energy development, it is for Oahu, and it goes to Lanai, Molokai, and now they will open up cabling to Maui. But the Big Island was completely excluded from the state energy planning process. That means the only other body that can set a framework for policy are you folks at the county level. We need you to come in. I need to ask you these questions. When we look at the county general plan, have you determined what our county needs are for firm power? And I'm saying that because Senate Bill 2001 was signed into law, and that now establishes geothermal as firm source, affordable, secure source. This now opens the door for the county to form a resolution on energy policy that will speak to the new passage of Senate Bill 2001. Have you looked at our firm power needs? Have you looked at how much we need to support agriculture on the island? We need to assess this because of food security issues. We have geothermal now in Puna, but no benefit is coming to agriculture. What kind of benefits can the county put in a policy resolution? We need the county to come out and say, what is going to be the priority for us here in Hawaii County? Is it going to be 1,000 megawatt for a few people to make hundreds of millions so that we can export it in a cable to Oahu? Is that the priority? Or is the priority to look at energy development for our county needs? Energy development, if it goes in a place like Puna, isn't it appropriate, since we have that general plan, to say that energy needs to be made available to facilitate agriculture? That's how you support a general plan where a county says agriculture is Puna, and you put geothermal out there, agriculture never gets anything. That's inappropriate under the general plan. But we need these guidelines and this basis to be provided by the only body that has the authority to do it. And it's the county. It's the county body. It's not the governor. It's not the mayor. It's this body. And I'll tell you for myself, I really, in number 4, I really need to ask you to consider it. I was astounded that the mayor went to Asia, took HECO, took ORMAT, to look at mega development and made press statements there about a plan that hadn't even been discussed and approved by this body. But then again, he doesn't have the authority to make that decision. It is you, isn't it? You may be surprised in the future. We need to know, is your priority energy self-sufficiency for our county, or this inner island cable and hydrogen battery development for export to China? It certainly is not the priority for the IDG. These are the considerations that were brought to the legislature last summer. From that time forward, legislation was drafted and prepared. We worked on Senate Bill 2001. which sets geothermal as a firm power source. The other measure you need to really take a look at was an administrative measure. Now, it's Senate Bill 3003, eradicating geothermal subzones. They no longer exist. For myself, I was glad to see that because I was here 25 years ago when geothermal subzones were designated, and they weren't designated in a scientifically appropriate way. When you look at the geothermal subzone maps, it looks like somebody took a big pen and said, oh, let's make a circle over here. Here's the East Rift Zone. Let's make a little circle around that. Well, the reason why it looks like that is because that's what happened. They didn't do testing. Bishop Estate wanted to develop Walalai. They own it. They thought there was geothermal there. They had a development partner that wanted to do it. So they just made a little circle around Walalai. Well, the scientific data shows that there's only a 35% chance of finding geothermal there. Nevertheless, a little circle was drawn, the entire East Rift Zone. It's time that we look to identify geothermal resources on the land where they are in a scientific way. How the county is going to interface with this is important. There is a possibility the Public Land Development Corporation may be utilized. They're drafting their rules right now. The county needs to look at how those rules are coming out and participate with that drafting effort, because you want to ensure that there are protections. You want to ensure that if geothermal is taken and put in the middle of Puna, there better be some benefit for what the general plan says is going on out there, which is agriculture. So now is the time. I would encourage you to take a look at some of these things. Maybe you want to talk with Chair Bill Ida, Lloyd Haraguchi from the PLDC, work on it. I'm working with the unions. We want to make sure that when geothermal moves, a fair rate is paid to the union employees on this county. A fair rate. We're talking about it now. The county has been all left out of these discussions, and I'm embarrassed to tell you that in 4 days the mayor is going to be presenting what's supposed to be, I understand, this county's plan for the 1,000 megawatt cable to Oahu. Mayor presents this to the Energy Policy Forum in 4 days. I'm going to try to go down there because we're trying to find out what the secret plan is. But the real plan is that there's a 50 megawatt RFP coming out in a month or less. It is the first RFP we've had for 25 years. Speaking as a Hawaiian who fought it tooth and nail last time around, I can tell you that I am vitally concerned with how development is going to move, whether or not our rights to worship are going to be protected. And I'm a Hawaiian who's been arrested for worship. I'm not like the Pele Defense Fund Hawaiians, never showed up. I was arrested in Halava, protecting right to worship. These are critical issues that we need to get involved with. And for our county, when I look at the financial situation in our county, I'm astounded with what has happened with the resolution. It will depress property values. I just want to tell you, I've been approached as an attorney by a family in Mililani Estates. They want to retain me to sue the county over the ordinance that you passed. I told them I cannot do that. I'm in a conflict. I'm working for geothermal energy, clean, self-sufficient, maybe not 1,000 megawatts, maybe just 50, but something that will provide money to the community, jobs to our labor people who are unemployed, and bring about small business development. That's what we're about. We need some help from the county. We need you to show the light on what is going to be the policy. I surely am hoping that you will stand up for sustainable clean technology, support the trust obligation, support local Hawaii-based business, instead of providing significant funding to foreign companies. And in closing, let me suggest you read the congressional report. It came out on March 20th of this year. The House Committee on Oversight has now issued a lengthy report looking at malfeasance and the theft and misappropriation of hundreds of millions of energy dollars. Page 56, it takes a look at the parent company of PVG, which got 350 million congressional dollars announced in 211, of which now 98 million appear to have been misappropriated in violation of federal American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. The Congress has now pulled out the documents on Nevada Geothermal to base their report on the New York Times story in 2011. They went through an audit. The audit ruled, and this is Deloitte and Touche. This is a Deloitte and Touche audit report, September 2011. They found that they had significant doubt about the company's ability to continue as an ongoing concern. They found that the millions given by the Congress, 98 million, had been diverted to pay off creditors in Israel. They found that the company continued to be plagued with serious financial difficulties, and most important and most critical, they found that the Nevada geothermal problems relating to technology continue to exist. If you look at the findings of the congressional report at page 61, they're finding continuing problems relating to cables, electrical fires in cabling. And this report is coming out the same month that the mayor went with Ormat and HECO to look at 700 megawatts with cabling to Oahu. Better read the congressional report that talks about the ongoing problems. I'm working with Congressman Issa's office. They tell me that they will seek criminal liability. They will not allow 350 million. This is way bigger than Solyndra. 350 million given by the Congress, our money, for geothermal developments in this country. 98 million diverted to pay creditors outside of the country, violating federal law. And now this past week, are we surprised to see that the subsidiary of Ormat, Nevada, has just given notice they will no longer be offering their shares publicly because they do not want to file their report with the SEC. Don't just look at the SEC reports of the parent. Find out what the subsidiary is doing and realize that we have another subsidiary sitting right here. We are very transparent in what we're doing, and we're very clear. I get a chance to say things that others on the IDG board would not, but I am a human rights advisor, and I continue to advise the United Nations. Right now, I'm looking at the human rights violations of the Kalinga Hill tribe people in the Philippines, whose lands are being destroyed by mega development by American geothermal corporations. There's a reason why you pull your subsidiaries out from filing with the SEC. Once you have a congressional report like this, you have a concern to cover your tracks. That's not the way that you should do business in this state. That is not the way. That's not the way we need energy developed in this state. I was talking to a friend of mine, and he said, you know, you folks are fighting the good fight, but the RFP is going to come out. And you know, did you know that in 1989, a memorandum was executed between Ormat and HECO? 1989. Get a copy of it. They agreed to have Ormat develop all the geothermal and then to sell 50% of the ownership of the company to HECO. If that's not expanding an energy transmission and production monopoly, I don't know what is. But the information relating to that memorandum of agreement has never been made public since the time that it was released. I'm sending that data to Representative Darrell Issa. If there is any information that you would like, I would be very happy to send it to you. But people don't know about the 1989 agreement. And it wasn't True Geothermal and HECO, it was ORMAT and HECO. And now it appears that that's being drug out and breathed into life, which is why our mayor went to the Philippines. He didn't go there to see technology, and he didn't go there to see LEAT technology. He didn't mention to you folks that it's ORMAT LEAT technology. There's numerous technologies in the Philippines, but they didn't want to look at anything sustainable and clean. They went there in a time of fiscal crisis, taking thousands of dollars out of the county so that they could go to a foreign court and negotiate a deal outside of the purview of this state. I will take it to the Department of Justice. We are waiting the RFP. When the RFP is awarded, if it in any way resembles prior agreements or relationships, I can guarantee you, you will see the largest antitrust litigation ever filed. And it will not just be with the geothermal producer in HECO. Unfortunately, it will likely have to include the county because your own mayor has furthered it. And definitely it will include the state. Why waste time? Why not do the right thing? Why not do the Pono thing? Y'all are the county. Will you give us a resolution that tells us what our county energy priorities are? Is it going to be 1,000 megawatts and cable to Oahu? Or is it going to be something that is small, sustainable, clean, supports agriculture? Is it going to be under a model that recognizes a trust obligation? Or is it going to be under a model that's going to allow a few people from abroad to make hundreds of millions of dollars? You know, OHA has adopted our model. They couldn't endorse the IDG, and we didn't ask them to because they're a government body. But OHA came out and said, look, you guys, we're going to adopt this model, but we can't endorse you. It doesn't matter. We're happy. Take the model. Make sure anyone who comes here follows it. We may get the bid, we may not, but if we know our community is protected, our county is getting firm power, and that we are going to have food security, we'll be happy with that. It's not just about making a killing. It's about making a plan that is for energy self-sufficiency and security. I want to thank you folks for giving us the opportunity. I live here, I live in Curtistown. I'm working with Don Thomas and others. If there's any help you ever need, call me. Call the IDG. When Denny Kaufman called and said I have a standard here, they're telling me it'll protect the aquifer. I don't know how to check it. The IDG responded, send it to us. We will send it globally. We will find out if other countries and other companies support this standard. We paid for it. It's part of what we do. We protect the aquifer and we protect our peoples. We're not going to allow any more foreign companies coming here. This is a Hawaiian resource. We have a right to develop it for our energy security. We were arrested. We went to court. We have a right to take those wins to protect our culture, and we don't need to fight with our neighbors about it. We have never been that way. Energy belongs to the public and the native in this state, and we will work with the public and the native. We will be spared the fighting based on race, but we will not tolerate globalized companies coming in. Those who have ripped off Congress, those who will not report to the SEC. We're not going to allow it, whether we get the RFP or not. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you. That concludes the presentation portion of Communication 764. Mr. Hoffman, would you like to make a motion to table?
Move the table, Mr. Chairman.
Second by Mr. Onishi. Any discussion on the motion to table? If not, Madam Clerk?
Mr. Ross? Ms. Ford?
Aye.
Mr. Hoffman?
Aye.
Mr. Ikeda?
Aye.
Mr. Onishi?
Aye.
Mr. Pilago?
Aye.
Ms. Smart?
Excuse me.
Mr. Gong?
Aye.
Chair Yoshimoto?
Aye.
Chair Yoshimoto, you have 8 ayes.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Motion passes. Okay, at this time, council members, do we need a break or would you? Okay, we'll take a short break, probably 5 minutes, then we'll begin. 10:30? Okay. We'll be in recess till 10:30, and then at that time we'll be beginning public testimony. In recess.
Should we take all of our things?